In this video we'll deal with change management. Now this is a topic that's dealt with in other videos as well, so it's important to view those other videos, locate them and view them and get an overall picture of the importance of change management and what it involves. However, for this session we're going to look at the type of organizations or organisms almost that enable change to take place and facilitate change and the implications of change when it happens. So we'll start by just reminding ourselves of the SCurve. Now the SCurve is just the life cycle curve that products go through, and when we think of the SCurve we think of products coming into existence. They go through a growth phase, then they mature and they start to decline. Each phase really requires an adjustment on the part of management, and certainly at the introductory stage when a new product's developed, the organization must adjust to the new product. It must facilitate the new product, and that will necessitate change right perhaps throughout the organization. And there must be a tolerance towards change and an acceptance of its need. And various issues associated with change, from financial, from physical, or reorganizing production, reorganizing the offices, whatever's required. But also on the human side, people must change and people must accommodate the newness of the situation. So change is common to nearly all forms of change. The SCurve applies right throughout nature almost. It's very difficult to think of examples where it doesn't apply, where we have this introductory stage, the adjustment stage, the maturity stage, when we're quite accustomed to the new situation. It's no longer new. It's now the status quo. It's now this situation. And then later on, we want to change it further. So we experience this in all sorts of ways. We're happy with our car. We've adjusted to it. We've bought it. It's new, and we're fascinated by it. Then it's mature in the sense that we're used to it. It's what we do. And later on we start to get fed up with it. We want to change. It's a part of being us. So common to all forms of change is this idea of the SCurve. And the phases are formation, growth, maturity and decline, like I was saying earlier. The formation is the basis for the change, and then the introduction of the change, and then the growth in this new situation when the change has been implemented, maturity when we get used to it, and eventually decline when we want something else. Transformation occurs when shifting to a new curve, which is what we do. We facilitate one curve in the sense that we adjust to it and we work with it and we accommodate it. We know the product, we know what's required, we know the service, we know the changes that were brought about for its introduction, and we've adjusted to it. Now when we're considering yet another product, then we have to transform the organization, we have to transform the way we do things, we have to adjust to the new requirements. So there's an almost constant process of transformation going on within organizations as they adjust to the introduction of new products. So organizations are in this state of flux. They're in this state of constantly adjusting from one position to the next. They're moving from, in a sense, one curve, one SCurve, to the next SCurve. They're jumping from one to the next. It's the most challenging part of change is the radical transformation. Once a product's been introduced and has been developed, the organization can facilitate it. They can start to adjust to it, making minor modifications to the way they work or to the way the plant is laid out. But it's getting the product in the first place that is really the big concern. Getting the product established, getting that radical transformation completed, where the organization has adjusted fully to the introduction of a new product. So there's different types of learning and different skills required when a new product is introduced. And it's important that once, in a sense, the company has jumped from one S-curve to the next, that it moves along the curve. It adjusts to it and becomes more proficient in the production of the new product. It's learning by doing. It's working out what is the best way to produce the new product. And that means that it has, as I said, it's jumped from one position to the next. It's quite a radical change. Prior to the introduction of the new product, the company was working with the old product. And it had moved along the S-curve. It had moved perhaps into the decline phase. Now with the new product, they're in the learning phase. They're at the early stages again. It's a new product. So it's a new curve and they're back at the learning phase, the introductory phase. They haven't even perhaps got as far as maturity. So companies are constantly on the lookout for new products, new innovations, change, and particularly ones that they are confident will meet the requirements of the market. But in so doing, of course, they're jumping around between different S-curves, the S-curve being the product life cycle curve. They're jumping from one to the next. One product might be at its peak, entering a decline phase. The next product might be just maturing and they're looking yet for another one which is just about to be introduced. It hasn't even been fully developed yet. So companies are constantly in the process of developing ideas and products and trying to innovate the product. After all, the whole idea is to meet customer requirements. The marketing department will have fed back its information it picks up from customers and from observing the market as to what is required, what product specifications most accurately meets customer requirements. That's fed back, so the company will be working all the time to innovate the product and make sure its product meets customer requirements so it will get the sales. But customer requirements are ongoing. Customer requirements change. Customers are constantly looking for better products with more functionality, better design, cheaper, but also more fashionable, and so on and so on. So there's a constant need for companies to update their product line, which means in effect they're moving from one S-curve to the next. The product life cycle curve they're on at the moment could be in the mature phase, and they're now working on the next one which will be just about to be introduced. So it'll be at the introductory stage, the formation stage, and it may have yet another product that's been producing for some time which is in the decline stage. So it'll have different product life cycle considerations for different products it's producing. It requires energy and motivation and a leap of faith to keep developing products like this, and the management must be very dynamic. They must be prepared to look for change and implement change. They must be motivated. They must really want this because it is a hassle, it is a problem. They're constantly updating the product range, constantly changing the organization of the structure, constantly moving people around and retraining and moving the equipment around. It's a lot of work, so there must be highly motivated individuals. And it's a leap of faith because the introduction of the new product with its new S-curve, that may not be successful. The hope is it will be. The hope is that the information that they're working on in terms of design and customer requirements will meet what customers are looking for. That's the expectation. But in the world in which we live, many things may change. So we're talking here about the zone of transformation. We have an ending, a neutral zone, and a new beginning. So products run out, they enter the decline stage, and at some stage they will simply stop selling. They are no longer required. There might be very small sales into the future where some customers were loyal to the product, they just simply liked it, but not sufficient to keep the production lines running. So at the end, there's a nothing, there's an emptiness. And then a new beginning, because the new product will come into existence. So this transformation is going on all the time. Companies are updating their product lines all the time to try and keep contemporary, to try and meet customer requirements. So if we can just imagine, very badly drawn here on the bottom right, a couple of S-curves, we have situations like the one I've got there, where the top one is, as you can see, it's dipping. And it's dipping, it's running out. It's in the decline. So once it starts to go into decline, they start to try and introduce a new one. But the new one is not being very successful at the early stages. It has to be introduced, it has to be marketed, it has to be tuned almost to the customer's requirements, and the customers must be made aware of it and its qualities and its attributes and so on. So in a sense there's a gap, a zone of transformation indicated by the red arrow, which is the difference between the one that's declining and the one that's hopefully about to start. And that's the worrying gap the companies have. Will the existing product continue successfully for sufficient time to enable the new product to find its position in the market and become established? So in a sense there is a gap, there is a mismatch between the two. Here's a picture I found in a text, and it's a very good illustration of what we're talking about in terms of, let's say, productivity and the transition curve. So at the ending of a product, when a product starts to decline and ends, if we look at the left-hand top corner, we start with ending. And I'll just put the cursor onto the screen, just a moment. Okay. Here we got the ending. So the product is running out here. It's there's nothing. It's facing doom. So this product is almost at the end. And of course, the implications of that is that there's a shock for the people, because the product is no longer popular. So there'll be a shock for the people who've been working on it, and there'll be a sadness almost in the organization. Chances are they know this product, they've developed it, they've worked with it, they've fine-tuned it, and now the market is turning against them. Some people will deny this is happening. They simply don't accept it. They believe that the evidence is wrong. That's quite common emotional adjustment to what's happening. The product is no longer popular, it's in decline, and the business is in decline as a consequence, perhaps. Of course, there'll be anger among some who will say it was all mismanaged, it's management's fault, they did the wrong thing, and need someone to blame. There'll be frustration because people will be worried and frustrated that all their efforts are not working. They'll be worried as to why they're not working, and if they were misled by management and got to work in the wrong area or developed the wrong components or whatever. There'll be frustration and annoyance. And then later on apathy, where to think, well, that's it, it's gone. There's no point in fighting it. It's over. It's finished. And this is the neutral zone of transition in here. Then there'll be confusion as to what to do next. Introducing a new product, how to do it, what's this product about, will it work, is it worth continuing? A sort of unease about the whole thing. And eventually they'll start to like it. They'll start to say, this product is picking up. Productivity is picking up. They're getting engaged with the product. And after a while, they really like it because now it's a very successful product. And then they'll put full effort behind it. So it's a new beginning. So we have this ending that's over there on the left up here. The product comes to an end. This neutral zone, which is the zone in between the end of one product and the start of the next. This almost no man's land in between. And then we've got the new beginnings up there. So we have phases of change. Everyone experiencing a major change moves through a process of change and realignment, represented by the transition curve. So the curve we just got is fairly typical of how we adjust to change. The ability to recognize that one's reaction is part of a larger process helps individuals regain a sense of control and work effectively in times of change. So if we know this is common, it's normal to feel angry and frustrated and annoyed and because the product is declining, and we're frustrated because we don't know what's going wrong and why don't people want the product. But then we have hope with a new product that somehow it will pick up and we will have a future. We will survive. The new product will become popular and we'll be working on this new product. So in between the two, there's a changeover period when the frustration and the annoyance and the depression almost will change to happiness, engagement, optimism, and there's that sort of period in between where it's changing over. That's the zone of transition, the zone of transformation. So if we look ahead, based on the previous curve, the one I showed you earlier on, we have this denial. On the axis we've got the external environment, and we have got the internal self, the past and the future. And as the product starts to dip, as we move into the future, you can see we're in denial, and then there's resistance. We try our utmost to revive the product. And when it's beyond doubt that this product is not going to work, it's no longer popular, we start to explore for a new product. And later on, if it's successful, we have commitment to the new product. So it's how we change. It's how we've moved through this adjustment period. Now, leading your team, well, first of all, helps others to see the need for change. So the power of communications is very important. People must be taken through the process. They can see sales are falling off for a product, and they can see perhaps the new product is becoming slightly more impressive and selling more and more popular, and so it's important to communicate. It helps others to see the need for change. It helps them to switch over from one to the next. It requires knowledge. To communicate, there must be content. The people communicating must understand the product, they must understand what they're saying, it must be logical, it must make sense, so they must have knowledge. And they must have commitment, they must have a passion for what they're saying. The communication to be effective, the communicator must not just understand what he or she is saying, but they must have some sort of commitment to it, because they need to engage the listener, the person being communicated to. They must engage them, they must get the message across, they must understand it, and they must start working with the new situation. There may be reward required. Implement the change may need some sort of reward. It may be remuneration in the form of cash, salary. It may be more psychological about working conditions and feeling a part of the team and a part of the organisation. And it's important to reward those who implement the changes, because they're the ones who brought it about, the ones who wholeheartedly committed to it, brought it about. So they should be recognised and rewarded. And change will only happen if it's supported. It must have the commitment of senior management, it must have the commitment of line management, it must be supported, it must be helped along. Otherwise the change will not happen. So it's important that these are put into place. Also, facilitate. When change has been proposed, there's a need to show the way forward. There's a need to point the direction in which the company wishes to travel and where the product will be and the requirements of the product. It needs directions. The people working on the product need directions. They need something to aim at. They need a goal or an objective. They need to be able to achieve that. They can't just continue working on it without some end point and some recognition of achievement. You can only achieve if we've had a goal to achieve. So in this particular phase, the team are ready to work with the leader and to design and create a new pathway, a new set of processes and a new direction of work and a new set of requirements for work and so on. So the team are ready to work with the person, but there must be leadership and there must be a clear indication as to what's required. Objectives must be set, pathways must be set, and goals must be set. So the people working on it know what they're trying to do. So it needs to create a roadmap for the change. There has to be learning and looking at different skills and developing different skills and working as a team. So that's important. It's sometimes considered to be the high energy, the exciting period of the change. Because this is when the change has now been agreed, people are on board, they're thinking about it, they're starting to get involved, but now it needs to be done. And now they need to explore the best ways to do it. So lots of ideas about how to produce it and how to structure the business to do it, and lots of ideas coming up about the way forward and the formation of teams and who's working together and what are their skills and what skills are required, what training programs are required, what pieces of specialist equipment are required. The marketing section or department will be involved in making sure that the product meets customers' requirements, and customers will be contacted to say that it's a new product about to be delivered and so on. So it's quite an exciting high energy period. It's also important to listen, to get people into the change and listen to their opinions. It's important to get a wide variety of comments and criticisms and feedback, because that will help to refine the whole process. This process is new, the product is new. It hasn't been done before. So no one has a monopoly of knowledge here. Not the management and not the workers and not the line management and not the marketing department. They've got an idea of what the customers want, the customers' requirements. They've got a good idea because through research in the market they have determined this. But how exactly to do it and how to respond to that requirement, that market requirement, is difficult. So the team has to be ready to accept and become active in the process of change. The team must engage it, and the team must know what's required of them, what's the goal, what's the objective, what's the way forward, what machines are required, what skills are required, and they must be able to feed back any shortcomings to the management. Otherwise, the problem has just been stored up and it'll manifest itself later. Perhaps it'll stop the whole production system later because it's a fundamental problem that somehow was being wasn't spotted. It was overlooked in the whole process. So it's important to listen and get a wide variety of comments and criticisms. It's important to get over any resistance as well. There might be some residual resistance in the team who think, well, in the past, on the other product, the one that declined and failed, finished, we used to do it this way. So I think we should do it this way now again. Well, that's old thinking. The new product might require new thinking. So it requires new skills and new ways of working. And that means adjustments on the part of the workers and the management. Five challenges to major change efforts. Well, there are five main challenges. First of all, insufficient support for people during the change. Sometimes people are asked to make changes and they're not being supported. It could be really bad. It could be people are asked to make changes and they're not supported in terms of time or resources at all. They're expected to just work on it when they have a chance, when they have a break. Just make some provisions for doing something new. Well, that's the worst case scenario. That's really bad. But a lot of the time it may be that management don't know what resources are required in order to introduce the change, so there may be miscalculations about the time allocation and the resources at the disposal of those asked to implement the change. So that's one big problem. There may also be confusion about the purpose of the change. It's important that the people working on the change know that it's market-led. It's because the customer's requirements have changed, the customer's tastes have changed, perhaps the previous product was no longer acceptable, it declined, its particular market failed, it was no longer demanded by its customers. So it's a matter of life and death for the organization. It could be as serious as that, and the message needs to be communicated and people need to understand the purpose of the change. Why is the change taking place? It's not just for the fun of it, it's necessary for the organization perhaps to survive or for the organization to grow and prosper. There may be lack of commitment by some parts of the management or some parts of the workforce. It may be that they don't see it as that serious and they think it's going to be okay, so they don't have to pay too much attention to it. Now that's quite dangerous. That complacency can ultimately lead to a failure of the product or a failure of the project. So there has to be full commitment. There has to be enthusiasm on the part of those involved. Enthusiasm to bring about the changes. It may be that some structures are not included in the change. This can be human structures or it can be physical structures. It could be that the design of the plant or the existing technology is not exactly what's required. But because of pressure on resources, it's what the company's got, so they have to work with it. Now that's a big challenge. They have to customize what they've got to make this new product. Well, it might be a real problem. It'd be far better to have customized machines, ones that are specific to the task. But that will be a lot of resources, so they have to look at existing machinery. What have they got? What can they do? and they need to be able to utilize that. But also in terms of people. People's skills are along particular directions. They've worked on perhaps the previous product for many years, and they've built up confidence about its production and its processes and its requirements, the various stages of production, and looking at customers and dealing with the market. And there was it had become routine and quite easy almost to do. Work was not that demanding because everyone knew what they were doing, what was expected of them, and providing they did it, life moved on. But when a new product's introduced, it's all in change. There's new techniques to be learned and new processes and new requirements. So structures have to change. Working structures, working teams have to change. Perhaps the physical environment has to change as well. So there's a big adjustment to the new product. Sometimes people are confused about how they're supposed to change. They need to be educated about what's required of them. They need training. Just can't take a set of workers who are accustomed to making one product, and when that product declines, then move them across to the next product and expect them to kick off by being very efficient and very dedicated and very motivated with the new product. People are people. They need to be supported. They need to be acculturated. They need to have classes and education and training, and they need to be taken through the steps, introduced to the product, shown the product, and understand the significance of the product to the business. It's communications as well. So people need to know how they're supposed to change. Not just expected to change, but needed to know how to do it. Organizations and change. Well, manage event through change management classes. Change management classes are a good idea because they get the idea of flexibility into the minds of the operators, the workers, the line management, throughout the various departments. People become accustomed for the need to change. They know that the product they're making now is not going to last forever, so they're going to change. Realignment of organizational parts and processes. Now, I partly mentioned this one earlier, but sometimes existing machines have to be realigned. They have to be changed so as they can produce new parts or be used in different ways. So there's an element of re-engineering, rethinking the whole situation. The machines are the plant that the business has got. This is what is there. They might dream about new plant and dedicated machinery and computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing and so on. They might dream about that, but they haven't got the resources perhaps to do it. So what they have to do is work with the existing plant and try and realign it and restructure it and see ways of solving problems that will enable them to efficiently produce the new product. So there's this appraisal that's required of not just the plant, but the working processes, the routines of work that can realign the whole structure of the business to enable it to successfully manufacture the new product. The greatest force for business change comes from everyday people and from people-to-people interactions. So normally it's people-to-people interactions that lead to change. The change may be communicated to the business via the marketing department. This is what the customers now require. This is what they would like to see. This is what the competitors are doing. These are the functionalities that are suitable for today's market. And the people within the organization, once they know that the change is required and they're going to have to work with this change, they will communicate best practice one to the other. There's a lot of learning that goes on in an informal sense within the organization. People will help each other, chances are. They'll watch what they're doing and say, actually, if you do it this way, it'll work better. Or try this and that might work. So there are lots of solutions and suggestions that are passed around between the people in the workplace. After all, they've got a common bond. The common bond is this is their livelihoods. So it's in their interest to try and make it work. So there's a lot of support, very informal support, that can be tapped into within organizations. The power of interactions and building agile organizations, that can be tapped into. Now, the power of interactions I've just mentioned is the power of people talking to each other and departments talking to each other and coming up with suggestions for new ways to work and to deal with situations as a consequence of having to deal with a new product. But building an agile organization, building one which is very lean and very almost minimalistic, it's getting the job done without all of the bureaucratic parts that perhaps were involved in the previous one. This is an opportunity for the business to rethink itself, an opportunity for it to cut out the bureaucracy and cut out the paperwork and cut out the meetings and cut out all that was unnecessary. So it needs to look very radically at what is actually required. Get that done and then try to control the growth of the organization in ways that don't fit the agile nature of the business, what they have designed. So agile means performing only the functions that are needed. The superfluous functions, the ones that seem to grow within organizations, those can be cut. They're not necessary. Change and agility results are paradoxical. Concentrated focus on change as an event or a system to be managed reduces flexibility, reduces the flexible nature of the business. The business has to be agile. It should be able to move from one situation to the next. People should be able to adopt and concentrate on their functions, but modify the functions and be able to adjust to any changes required. The people are very flexible. They're agile. They're able to move from one position to the next. In the sense, mentally you move. They're able to take on new tasks and learn new tasks, and they haven't got a resistance to the new tasks. But sometimes change may require a particular product. The product needs to be set up and established, and once the most efficient forms of manufacturing has been agreed and understood, then in a sense the agility may evaporate because people have found the best way of producing it, so they will want to work to that design. So they will not change. So in a sense there is a trade-off. Once efficiency has been found and people are happy with the way they're working and routines have been established, then agility tends to suffer. The more you leverage the power of people-to-people interactions, the more you build agility as a core competency. When you use leverage, is like using. When you use people-to-people interactions, when you allow people to interact and talk to each other and discuss work and so on, they become more flexible. They want to try out new ideas and they want to try out new ways of doing it, and it becomes more agile. They're able to build a more flexible organization because they themselves can make the adjustments. So sometimes planning it from the top gives a very rigid structure. This is how the product will be produced. Raw materials will go from there to there, and production will move from here to here, and so on. Very rigid. Agile when people to people talk about it, and they say things like, we'll move the materials in, I'll do it first, then you, and you pass it over there. And in a sense, it's almost an organic development. It's growing development. It's just come into existence. People have worked out the solutions. There's no paperwork. They're just thinking about it. And of course, once a good design like that has been worked out, then it may be codified. Then it may be possible to write it down and say this is our way of working and these are our procedures, so that subsequently when new staff are taken on, they know what the way of working is. But the original design for the work might have actually been the product of people just chatting about what was required. There could be people on the shop floor talking about the best way of setting up the production system. And that's an agile business. They're flexible. They're capable of changing. They're capable of moving ideas around and moving production around in a way that suits them and will bring about more efficiency. People relating to one another are most powerful, but unpredictable force for business change. That's the problem with people-to-people interactions. It's a very powerful force because it's a way of getting agility and getting movement and getting agreement between them. But the problem is that it's also somewhat unpredictable. The consequences need to be carefully thought out. So before there's wholehearted permission to implement ideas that have come around through flexible thinking, agile thinking, people-to-people discussions, before that's implemented, the logic of what is happening and being proposed should be carefully checked. Just in case the people who come up with the ideas didn't quite understand the significance of what they were thinking or saying or doing. So it is important to check the recommendations. Now let's look at this idea of agility in a little more detail. Organizational agility is having the attitudes, processes and energy to execute new business strategies quickly and effectively. That's our definition. So agility, organizational agility, is having attitudes and processes and energy to exercise new business strategies quickly and effectively. So when somebody comes up with a new idea and it becomes a part of the business strategy, it's capable of implementation quickly because people are agile. People can move to it straight away. They can understand it, they can implement it, they're enthusiastic, they want to try it out. They've got that mindset that they want to experience it. What's this new idea about? What's this new machine? What can it do? May I have a go? Can I try it? Oh, it can do this as well. Why don't we use it in that context? So there's a lot of ideas floating around. People are full of ideas. And if given the opportunity, the business can be extremely agile if the workers are encouraged to think and talk out loud, express criticisms, express support, make recommendations, discuss their ideas. It doesn't have to be that time consuming. It sounds like it's very time consuming, but it doesn't have to be. It's just agile thinking, flexible thinking. And this could be a real benefit to the organization in terms of strategy implementation. Cotter looks at this type of situation here, where we've got simply across the top, the column headings is weak and strong, and the results, that's for the vision, I should say, weak and strong vision. And for the results, we've got high and low on the rows, on the horizontal bits. So if we have a weak vision and low results, weak vision and low results, then that's stagnation. So put the cursor onto the screen. Low results, weak vision, so stagnation. Weak vision and high results, unsustainable success. Well, it's a weak vision, so people are achieving, getting high results, but they don't know why they're getting them. They don't quite understand what's going on, and they have a weak vision. They don't know where they're going. It's almost inevitable it's going to collapse because there's no direction. They're not heading in any particular direction. Not sustainable. If it's a strong vision but low results, it'll just be killed off. People won't support it. So that's a good way of looking at the results and the vision. It's an interesting table just to show the different possible outcomes. With a strong vision and say high results, you're going to get sustainable success. There's a strong vision. The company knows where it's going to be. It knows what it's aiming at. The people working for it know what their targets are. They've got clear goals. And the results are very high. So that's sustainable. Everything's positive there. Transforming an organization and understanding change is the ultimate test of leadership. Change requires leadership. It needs someone to champion through the change, to explain the change and implement it. So it's the ultimate test of leadership. Introduction of change is the ultimate test of leadership. I must also be able to building coalitions and creating a vision. The leader must be able to form almost departments and sections, working sections, and form coalitions, form people into groups that work together and have similar ideas. And the leader must be able to create the vision so workers can relate to what's happening. They can see where the business is going. They can see what they're trying to do. The HR in change, well, the key objectives are provide forum to people to understand and deal with the events in a balanced way. It's important that the HR facilitate discussions between the workers who are experiencing change, so that the workers can air grievances and worries and concerns and get comments from others as well to allay the fears or discuss them out openly. It's worthwhile airing the situation and talking about it in an open fashion. The HR could also identify actions that the organisation can take to help employees. It's not just good enough that the organisation wants to change the system, but it needs to take the workers and the management, the junior management, the middle management, it needs to take them with them. It's like a journey. They're going to change direction. They're going to make a new product. They're going to enter a new market. This is new. So there's a fear on the part of the workers. Will they be required? Will their skills be required? Will they be made redundant and replaced by new people? So it's important that the HR are involved in this and that perhaps training programs are put in place and working with the existing management and the existing workers to reassure them that by acquiring new skills and updating their skills and working in this more flexible way, their careers will be fine. So there's a role for HR in terms of morale within the business. It's important to provide support systems. Support systems could be counselling, it can be informal committees and groupings to discuss issues and a works council perhaps. It's very important that the HR make those facilities available. And determine when to restore the organisation to normal functioning. After a change has been implemented, the HR should monitor the change, see how people are adjusting to it, see what issues are involved, see how they can help in terms of training or discussion groups or whatever they can do. And at some stage, they should then look at the organisation and say, well, this organisation is now normal. Their people are adjusted to the new product, to the new way of working. This is a normal situation. So now, in a sense, normality has been resumed, and normal functioning of the business will now resume. So it's the HR who determine, in a sense, when the business has got over the whole problem of change and implementing the requirements of the change. Now, a change model. Well, there must be a clear message. The message must be absolutely clear from whoever's proposing the change. What is the change? What's it about? Why is it being implemented? What will it involve? Who will it involve? What are its advantages and disadvantages, and so on and so on. It must be a very clear statement. Maybe a bullet-pointed document just outlining the various issues. There has to be a need for the change. People must go along with it. They must say, yes, we couldn't continue the way we were. Clearly it was not working well. Clearly the organisation was under pressure, so we had to change. It wasn't that we wanted it, but we had to. There was a need for the change. The direction of the change must be clearly indicated. People must know exactly what's required of them and which way they're going to move. And it may involve coaching and learning and reskilling. And there should be indications given to those involved or those who will be affected by this, indications of where this retraining and where the skills can be acquired and what facilities will be put in place to help them. So it's carrying the organisation with it. It's not just a change and a new organisation. This is taking the existing organisation, making a change, but carrying the workforce and carrying the organisation into this new situation. Looking at the desired results and looking at the need for continual improvement. And that's an issue that we dealt with in other videos in the context of total quality management. There is a need for continual improvement of the product because quality needs to be updated all the time, and the new way of working requires workers and management to constantly review their practices to see if better ways of working and better processes can be designed. So it's changing the culture almost. It's getting the organisation to recognise the need for change, and the need for change is continuous. So there's no complacency anymore. It's not that the organisation is going to make this one-off change and everything's going to settle down and it's going to become routine again. This is a change that's going to take place, and then there's going to be continual change as the business tries to continually upgrade the product and improve its quality, because that's how it's going to fight competition. That's how it's going to gain competitive advantage and how it's going to maintain it. So in a sense, what we're doing here in the language of different models that we already have looked at in different videos, we've unfrozen the business. The business was locked into a certain way of doing things. It was fixed in its way of working, in the processes it had, and the way it moved materials, and the sequence of the production and distribution and so on. It was fixed. Now we've unfrozen it. We unfreeze it, and then we change it. And then, oddly enough, we freeze it again. We change it, and then we lock it back. However, can I just say immediately on the freeze, the bottom one, we don't fully freeze it anymore because of the requirements of TQM, as I just said. The product, the core product, and the core skills of the organisation may be seen as somewhat frozen. But the core product itself may be subject to style changes, quality changes. So there is this incremental change because of continual improvement and the requirements of continual improvement. There is this continual change. So it's freeze, but it's not 100% freeze. It's less than 100% because the product will alter as time goes by. It'll alter gradually. There'll be new processes, new ways of working, new skills required, new machines required. So we're not talking about freezing the organization and fixing it in time. That doesn't happen anymore. The requirements of total quality management and of modern business is that there's an onward search, a quest for new ways of working, more efficient ways of working, better quality output, better management techniques. So all the time there is a search for more efficiencies and more quality. So the product, it's not frozen in the way I've got it on the screen just now. It's frozen, but it's not 100%. As I said, it will change. It might be incremental, it might be slow, but it will change. So define the business case. Well, define your case for management strategy. What is the management strategy, and prepare the management team. So that's when preparing for change, that's important. What is the strategy? That must be clearly worked out. It must be clearly articulated, because that's what's going to be given to people to understand. So if it's not clear, if it's vague or ambiguous, they're going to be vague, and that's not good. That's going to take time, and it'll lead to confusion. So fuzzy thinking is not required at this stage. It's not a good idea. Clarity is all important. Defining the management strategy, and then preparing the management team, telling them what's required of them. Then in phase 2, managing the change. Looking at the current situation, perhaps doing a SWOT, a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Do a SWOT on the business. But looking at the change, develop change management plans. Look at what's currently happening within the organization. Look at the strategic changes that are being proposed and see what adjustments are required. So develop change management plans. Plan to change from the current to this new situation. And take action and implement the plans. That's important. Implement the plans. Otherwise, they're just plans. They're just talk. So if they cease to be just talk, if they're actually implemented, then they take action. And act upon the implications. So it's reinforcing the change. Collect and analyze feedback. Talk to the workers, talk to the line management, talk to anyone in the company, talk to the management, the marketing section. The marketing department will have lots of contacts with customers and customers' reactions to the product, and so get a wide variety of feedback and get it as quickly as possible, and make sure it's good quality, it's accurate feedback. It is what actually people believe. So collect and analyze the feedback and diagnose gaps and management resistance. Where is there no commitment? Where is there a lack of commitment? Where is there a weakness in the organization? And try to manage that. And implement corrective actions where required, and celebrate success where situations have been achieved. When change has been successfully implemented and the organization seems to be running effectively, congratulate the people. They've done a good job. This little chart sometimes crops up in the literature, and it's quite interesting. It's responses to can versus will. I'll just put the cursor on. Over here we cannot act. I cannot act. And I don't have the will. I don't have the interest. So I don't have the interest to act, and I cannot. I cannot, and I don't want to. Appropriate. Letting go. Just let go. Finish it. Forget it. Here I can act, and I have the will to do. I want to do it, and I can do it. So mastery. Here I have the will. I want to do it, but I cannot, so I'm frustrated. And here I can act, and I don't have the will. I'm giving up. I can do it, but I don't really care. I'm giving up. So quite an interesting little matrix of the types of responses to change that we could get. Asking management, line management or whatever, asking them, do they like the proposed changes? And they say, well, I can do it, but I really don't care. I don't want to do it. So we could fit it into this type of little matrix. It just tells us what sort of outcome to expect. There's another one which sometimes crops up in the books. This is communications versus conversation. And I'll put the cursor back on. Here we got one-way conversation and we got two-way conversation. Well, one-way communications, I'm sorry. This is one-way communications. This is when the business tells the workers or tells the line management or tells whoever. One way. Two-way is when they talk. And the company, for example, it might use one way. It might use it's the web, or it might use the intranet to communicate. Very low impact because people have to read it and it's not making a big impact on anyone. If it's the company is trying to communicate effectively, have a conversation with the workers, then it would be face to face. Now that could be high impact over here. And you can see it runs from company, department and individual employee, and you have this grading across. Communications is one way. Conversation tends to be two ways. We talk to each other. And when we talk face to face, it has more impact than simply getting a memo or an email. That's communicating, but it's low impact. It could be low impact at least, or it's seen as low impact. It depends, I suppose, on the contents of the communications to a large extent, but on a routine basis, low impact means not very important, generally speaking, disseminated in the cheapest and most efficient way possible. If it's a very important communication, it may be face-to-face, or it may be a conversation, it may be a meeting where a person addresses the meeting. Now, we've had a very long class in this one. I expect you, if you've got this far, and I hope you have, to go back and do it all again. Only this time, stop the video from time to time, have breaks, and also to make notes from the slides and make notes from your reading from the PDFs and so on, and have a more comprehensive understanding of the issues involved in change. That's very important. Change is a critically important factor in modern business. So it's something we must be completely familiar with. But that's all I'm going to deal with in this class. So thank you for watching.